Alright folks, we're working on the L-39 Albatros by Cloud9, sold through Force RC, and we're just working out the Lemon RX DSMX stabilizer. It's a 7-channel with stabilizer, dual diversity antenna in my case, and end pin. Really like this thing. So anyway, we were just setting this up, turning stabilizer off, turning it on. Okay, I want to switch that channel. Servo setup. Reverse gear. Okay, so now stabilizer is off. Now it's on. Off. Now it's on. Master gain. Okay, so now I want to go to servo setup and I want to go to travel on auxiliary 3. I want to turn it all the way up for both to 150 up, 150 down. Now watch what happens. The master gain. I'm just rocking it. Okay, so you can get that set to whatever you want, and then you can quickly turn it off to disengage that. Great. So now we know that the pins need to point back. The interesting factor that I didn't expect is that we are not that far off from actually reaching without extension cords on some of these things, which I didn't expect at all. So I'm going to turn this gain down for the most part. It's really nice when you're testing to be able to just reach over to the radio and say, all the way up. Up is up. Okay. Down, down. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and test the flaperons real quick just to make sure the flaperon support's turned on. Flaperons are down and still working. The correction's still working. Up, up. Yep, everything's working there. That looks pretty cool. Flaperons are off. Now, of course, you could do spoiler on configuration here too, but I don't know that I'm going to do that. Okay, so all my regular stuff is set up on that. Now I just need to do Expo. So I'm going to set this all to the same switch, switch F. Okay. Okay, so rudder we're going to set to 15 on the lowest setting, 30 on the median, and 45 on the high, with 90% output. Okay, so the dual rates means that at maximum deflection, it's going to be 90% of that. Okay, in the top setting. The reason I do that is so that when I have my maiden flight, I'm not sure how this thing's going to respond on any of the axes. So what I can do is I can go ahead and set it to like incremental changes, and that'll help get me back to the ground. And then once I set it, I always set the middle setting to the optimal performance. And then if it's extra windy or extra rough or whatever, I can go to the next one down, or vice versa. Okay, so for ailerons, the neutral setting is going to be, I think we're going to need a lot of ailerons, aileron expo, just because I've seen these guys flying this thing and it looks like it's crazy for ailerons. Keeping in mind that you could set these to different switches. In my case, I'm not going to do that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just not my bag of tricks. And you notice I'm just going to start so they're all the same. I suspect I'm going to have to. Now, one thing I do that's different on elevator than I do on the others, I push down. Okay, I go to the Expo. I put not half again as much, but about 5/3. Okay? See what I'm doing, guys? Why do you think I would do that? What that does is you have gravity helping you when you pull up. You don't have gravity helping you, or you have gravity working against you when you pull up. You don't have gravity hurting you on the way down. It helps you. So you can, when you're in normal level flight, this really helps. When you're trying to do low passes and stuff. Okay. Now it's in the middle setting. Now let's turn off the throttle cut and just make sure that the stabilizer's reasonable. You have to arm the ESC evidently. A lot of vibration. Definitely moving some air. Don't like the vibration I hear. Probably a little bit out of balance. Not the end of the world. It's definitely something that can be corrected. But I don't know if I'll bore you with that on this build video or not. Let's open this up and see if it still vibrates. Okay, it's really loud. I'm actually going to use my hearing protection so that I don't go deaf. That thing is crazy. And it's crazy because I don't exactly think I'm going to have such a good time balancing it because it's glued in, and that's not uncommon. And I remember when I had to do it on my de Havilland Vampire, that was not a very fun project because I had to unglue it and rip it out, and that's a very scary thing to do. Okay, so next step for us is to go ahead and level the elevator. We can grab a small screwdriver, Phillips, and what we need to do is probably go ahead and shut off the stabilizer because that's annoying. You could do this either through the linkage or you could take off the actual the control arm from the servo. I'm going to do that because that brings it almost perfectly level. Now, we're probably going to need a little bit of up trim for launches and stuff, so no big deal there. But this way I don't have to undo that little brass fitting, because that's kind of a scary thing to do. Okay, and then just moving it around, it feels tight. That's what I want. I want to make sure that feels nice and tight. Okay, now all my trims are centered, obviously, because this is a new plane. I haven't messed with anything. And just looking at the aileron here, it looks perfect. Looking at the aileron here, it looks like we're just up a little bit. So we'll go ahead and try to get that adjusted real quick too. Because you want to start with a clean slate on this. You don't want to have a bunch of trimming if you can avoid it. Okay, so obviously we're just going to loosen this screw, and then we'll bring that right to where we want it. And somebody had recommended using a chip clip, which is a great idea, but I don't have chip clips in my basement. I do have these little guys right here, which are cheap wood clips. And I just got to make sure I'm not going to damage the foam. But that'll hold on to it so it stays nice and central while I tip it so I can work on it. So that's going to be nice and straight. I'll just tighten this. And I don't know if you guys remember from my unboxing video, but I had made some commentary about wanting to possibly put these on the inner holes. I might still do that just for the simple fact that I want the flaperons to deploy further, and then possibly saving the requirement, or possibly saving having to put in flaps. But the thing is, on this particular plane, I don't know if that's going to be necessary anyway. The other thing is, with such a minor adjustment, you can do the sub trim in your radio system, and that would be satisfactory on something like this. Okay, so now that we have those in, I'm going to just do a little get out of jail free card. And I'm just going to take and just do a little teeny bit of glue on there. And then I'm going to wipe that spot with my nail. So I want it to still be free to move, but I want to resist the movement back from the setting that we've intentionally put on there in the event of a loosening of that screw. Now you could also do Loctite on the screw, but I found that even with Loctite sometimes these things come loose. And this is more of like a get it to the ground quick and then actually fix the problem properly sort of maneuver. It's not really supposed to be like some end-all cure-all that's going to work perfectly forever. So then let's double check our orientation and directions one last time here. Okay, so now that we have everything aligned, oh, the rudder needs adjusted too. That's no big deal. We know how to do that. Something with some teeth on it so it doesn't slip. We don't need a lot. We'll just adjust it just a little teeny bit. Okay, so that's pretty close to center. Not perfect, but it's close. Just a little teeny bit. There we go. I feel like that's pretty close now. It's got a rudder. Nice even amount of play. I don't like after those things adjust. Sometimes you gotta kind of take and neutralize those angles so you have a nice straight push. But you see, then we've kind of upset our adjustment, so I'm gonna have to get a little bit more aggressive and use two tools at once. Okay, so now that I got that, just take hold with one and twist with the other. Very simple. That looks fairly straight. Need just a little bit more adjustment there. Okay, so that's very, very close, guys. I think that's satisfactory. And let's just double check our up, down, roll, 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 rudder, 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 rudder. And if you get in the habit of doing the obnoxious lean to the side, it's surprising how it helps you to distinguish when you're making a mistake, because you've done it a million times, right? So you don't even hardly think about it. And that's how I ended up crashing one of my grandpa's planes on a maiden, and I felt super bad about that. So anyway, learn from my screw-ups, guys. Looks good. Very, very good. Happy with everything so far. Okay, so we need to figure out how we're going to maintain this battery position. Oh, stabilizer while we've got it in position. Okay, stabilizer is on and all the way up. So up, 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 down, up, down. Oh, that's the wrong way. See? See, when the nose goes that way, it's going the wrong way. So I need to flip that axis. That's why we check these things from the direction it's going to be flying if you can. Okay, so now remember, that doesn't change the output, it just changes the correction. See? Still the same. And you always want to make sure you check all the axis every time you make a change in case something's hooked up wrong and you don't realize it. Okay. Okay, so when the nose goes that way, oh shoot, I already had that the right way, didn't I? Guys, that's embarrassing. That's why we do the test, I guess. So basically you want the rudder to point the way you're twisting. That's correct. Okay, so as the plane gets blown this way, the rudder is going to attempt to correct it, okay? So, now if I want to roll that way, see? When the wind pushes the nose, it's going to fight it. Okay, we had it right the first time. Guys, sorry about that. I don't mean to confuse you. Sometimes it just is. Okay, so how are we going to hold the battery? I got foam over here that I had in mind. It's this multi-layer stuff, real easy to cut. And my hope is I can brace this battery, but then also buy some strength, because you can see that it's not super strong there. Let's turn off the stabilizer. Okay. Now that we know that this is in the correct orientation, we can actually just, well, we could shut it off, but I don't want to do that just quite yet. We might need to move some things. Oh, we need to check the CG too. One thought I had is on this and many other planes, I've made little trays to hold the actual receiver in. Especially being that it's a stabilizer, it's nice to be able to get in there, fiddle with stuff. But that's not always practical, I realize. But you can see with those end pins on this plane, I might be sort of shooting myself in the foot. Sometimes end pins work great, sometimes they don't. In my experience, more often than not, end pins are the correct choice or the better choice. And of course, it's highly subjective. Okay, so I have my one line I had to loop. That was from the rudder. And then I have everything else is pretty well the same length then. So I'm going to tie one wire tie to accomplish making a nice little neat nest. Okay, get rid of that. And then I think we'll probably go ahead and do a zip tie back here, neglecting the elevator. Sorry guys, had a sneeze there I was trying to save you from. I think I got it shut off in time. Okay. So there we go. Okay, so we'll tie this one up too. Sometimes this is where it really comes in handy to have two of these forceps. I should get two bent tips. The bent tips are the way to go. I didn't think that when I was looking at them in the store. But then you use them once or twice and you figure out real quick the bent ones are what you end up using all the time. One of the best new tools that I have. And I would highly recommend having a good or crappy pair of forceps. Okay, so now let that loop back neatly. Let me see if I get a whole loop out of it. Can't quite get a whole loop out of it. Now I can put the pins this way, but then I have to reverse one of the axes. And that's unfortunate. But that would get it way back here. And plus we'll have to be really mindful about those cables. So let me pause it. We'll change something on the camera system. Okay guys, I thought maybe I'd have an easier time with this. Plus my battery is dying again. Okay, so to answer some questions that I know you're thinking, why don't you just mount it on the side? Well, yes, you can actually do that if you have a programmable radio with assignable channels. I did that in the Airbus A330, incidentally. But otherwise, you have to switch which output is changing. So, you know, if you change your axis relative to the stabilizer, then your rudder is this is the elevator then, instead of the rudder, okay? And these are the ailerons, right? Well, if you mount it this way, then which ones are the ailerons? Well, that'd be your yaw axis. So you can't do that if you're doing flaperons. So, not a big deal if you're using flaps, but if you're trying to get away with using flaperons, you'll want to probably avoid doing it that way. So in my case, I want to avoid doing that way just because I don't want the trouble. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to try to make this little tray that's going to hold this thing in this position right there, so it's up above the elevator servo, but yet we'll be able to work out getting this battery in and out without bumping and damaging those little antennas. The antennas are one of the more vulnerable points on a Lemon RX radio system. Okay, now you notice we've got this chunk of foam here too, and I could conceivably use a piece of foam to support it, but all those wires are under there right now. So I think what I might do is I might dig through my box of garbage, and it's literally plastic garbage, and see if I have a piece of plastic garbage that makes sense to potentially support that Lemon RX receiver. And so I've got this, I think this is like hair gel, and if I were to take and make something like that that would wrap around, that would be satisfactory. Or I could just cut off the sides, and we'll just see what we can get done here. And these are the types of things that are a little bit different on each plane, depending on what type of receiver you prefer to work with. But if you prefer to work with a Lemon RX, like I do, then this will be something you can copy if you want to. I started doing these build videos a while back with hopes that I wouldn't have to answer so many questions about specifics of my builds in my comments, because it's really hard to remember some of this stuff. And it's helped a little bit, but it's also raised a lot of good questions, and it's gotten a lot of great feedback from other you guys that are also interested in the hobby that have been doing it a little longer. I'm sure it annoys you to watch me do things that are not correct, but or not correct in your experience, you know. Okay, so I'm just kind of seeing what type of fit we've got here so far. And see, we've got those sharp edges, so it's almost got a hold of it as it is right now, which is really kind of cool. I didn't expect that. The trouble is I kind of like this sort of device to be in here and self-sustaining, self-positioning, so I don't have to worry about it bumping free or in flight having the axis change on this, which could be devastating. It could cause a crash. I mean, you can always shut the stabilizer off, you know, literally with the flip of a switch. So I could also do this. But see, when I use the elevator, I'm above it, but the elevator is causing that tray to move a little bit, which could cause a problem or two. This is a tough one. I got to think this through. I kind of have an idea of what I want to do. The other thing is, if I put the pins forward, I got to make sure all my axes are the same. So stabilizer's on, ailerons are correct, elevator's correct, rudder's correct, and then the only axis that's changed is the elevator. Nope. The elevator and the ailerons have changed now. So I'll have to fiddle around with this to see what I want to try to do. I turned that back off, by the way. I really need to figure out what I want to do on that, so I don't end up spinning my wheels a bunch. And honestly, this step I usually leave out of the videos because there's a lot of waffling that happens. And I know it's not very entertaining to watch that. try this another way. See what I just did there, guys? Just rotated it around so that the wires would cooperate instead of fighting. That made a big improvement, actually. Okay, so now I've got this. I kind of like that. If I could get that mounted to the side somehow. Maybe I'll do a balsa tray or something there. Alright, let's check again. I gotta see if this is working right now. Up, up, up. Right. Yep. Okay, so that's working correct now. It's off. Stabilizer's off now. Could hypothetically make that sit on top of the battery, but I don't like that either. Alright, I'm going to pause it. I'll show you what I do. Alright guys, I've kind of got this really close to where I think I want to do it, but the antennas are an issue. I've run into this issue before on Lemon RX, and I have a solution that works really easy. So what I end up doing is I take the receiver, which incidentally it's still powered up. It doesn't need to be powered up, but it's kind of nice to know that if you want something to move to verify something, you don't gotta dink around with re-energizing it. But I do want the battery in place because that'll help me figure out my positioning. Okay, so take your small screwdriver. Be really careful. These things strip easy. Okay, go ahead and take those out. Use your magnet or whatever to hold on to the screws. They're very dinky. Okay. What we're gonna do is we're gonna reposition the exit for the antenna. Okay, and it's super duper easy. So now there's pins on the back that go straight up like that, and then the screws hold this half. So what you have to do is you kind of have to slide your fingernail in, or a knife, or something thin, and you'll take and you'll open this case up like that. Okay, screwdriver, whatever it takes to get it open. Okay, see now that my back pin just popped out, which is what you want. Okay, so now that's popped off. So now what you can do is you can reposition where these come out of the cabinet, and they actually are on a swivel base. Okay, so then you can shoot them out straight or wherever you think you want to shoot them out. So just imagining where this is going to end up, you're going to want that little tab out of there too. And that tab can be cut off flush, and later on you can come back to that same exact spot again. So it's not a big deal if you cut this off, okay? I cut them off a lot just because they get in the way. And we're talking about these little things here, these little doohickeys. Now, you do need to open up a new hole to pass your antennas through. So we're going to we'll probably heat up a little piece of wire to do that, just because it's going to be super easy. You heat up a chunk of wire and do that with. So I just got a little piece of galvanized, heated this up in the torch, just making a couple of pass-throughs here. And I'm going to make them big enough that it's not an issue no matter which direction it comes from. And then take your X-Acto knife, and just clean up the holes so that you have a nice clean pass-through. And you're probably thinking the same thing I am. Why doesn't Lemon RX pass them out the end that way anyway? Because if you have an end pin, doesn't that usually mean that you have kind of like the lengthwise to work with in an airplane? I've thought that a lot. Okay, so line up your two pins, drop those down into your new passages, and then just be real careful you don't pinch your antenna leads. Now sometimes I'll put a little drip of glue to secure them and make a strain relief, but you certainly don't have to do that. And I've got a little bit of extra material there, so I'm going to be forced to open this back up and trim it, which is, it's not a big deal, really. But one thing I gotta warn you is don't break the antenna bases, because I have tried to replace with brand new antennas, and the brand new antennas sometimes come with like the little ring collapsed. And guys, it looks like we're out of time on this video, so there's more to come. Stay tuned. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Flight video coming soon. We're going to get the last loose ends tied up right away. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.